The Boeing 777X program remains one of the most ambitious commercial aircraft efforts of the modern jet age. Combining the long-haul performance of the 777 family with new state-of-the-art technologies, the 777X is positioned as a flagship aircraft for decades to come. However, despite the anticipation surrounding the aircraft, a longer-than-expected certification process and supply chain delays have pushed the type's entry into commercial service back by at least 7 years. So in this video, we take a look at why Boeing has already produced more than 20 Boeing 777X aircraft before certification, why some of them have been sitting parked for years, and why the oldest 777Xs may not even be delivered first once the aircraft finally enters service. According to a report by the Seattle Times, Boeing has already built 26 777X aircraft. Of these, 5 are currently being used for testing and certification purposes. That leaves a confirmed 21 777X jets that could be ready to be delivered to awaiting airlines soon after the long certification process finally comes to a close. In addition, most of these aircraft are unpainted, aside from the 5 test aircraft, and remain with a teal fuselage and plain-coloured airfoils. However, since the Seattle Times report, Boeing has produced more 777X aircraft. Satellite data of Boeing Payne Field, about a 30-minute drive north of Seattle and the home of the 777X program, shows at least 32 777X airframes parked at various places around the airfield. This includes planes parked head to tail on closed runways, on the ramp just south of the Boeing Future of Flight Museum, and even in parking lots north of the airport. In addition to the aircraft already built and parked at Payne Field, reports state that there is a mix of other 777X aircraft in different stages of production, from early stages of construction to final assembly. Elsewhere, the first production 777X, bound for Lufthansa, also recently took flight. As for any commercial airliner, certification, especially in the United States, is heavily reliant on extensive practical flight tests. The FAA requires a lengthy series of ground and flight tests that can only be conducted using fully assembled, production-quality aircraft. These aircraft then become dedicated for the sole purpose of certification, but can also be used for promotional events like the 2025 Dubai Air Show. In the case of the 777X, Boeing continues to use its 5 test frames for static structural testing and evaluation of the GE9X engines, especially important given their large size and thrust levels. These procedures also cover systems testing of new avionics and flight controls like the featured folding wingtips, as well as flight envelope testing to ensure the aircraft performs across all speed, altitude, and attitude scenarios. Other than the 5 aircraft Boeing has designated for certification purposes, the manufacturer has also built around 24 777X planes and placed them in storage. A key reason for the preemptive construction of 777X aircraft is simple: you can't build a 777 overnight. According to production data from the original 777 family, assembling a wide-body Boeing jet takes roughly 3 months, including mandatory flight testing. For an aircraft program with global demand and for a type whose entry into operational service has been delayed by at least 7 years, Boeing will want to ensure that its early customers are not forced to wait even longer after an eventual certification because the manufacturer hasn't produced any aircraft. When Boeing initially anticipated a 2020 certification date, it had already begun building 777X aircraft to address this need. While at first it may not seem logical to build dozens of uncertified aircraft, major structural changes to the airframe at this stage of the certification process are highly unlikely. This means that Boeing can continue to produce 777X aircraft now in anticipation of certification and can expect to make only minor modifications later. Although certification delays pushed Boeing's launch timeline back by multiple years, having 777X aircraft on hand already could save Boeing weeks, if not months, compared to starting from initial assembly once deliveries begin. In addition, once FAA certification is received, Boeing plans to ramp up 777X production to a rate of 3 to 5 aircraft per month, a substantial amount for the beginning stages of production of a new wide-body aircraft. In comparison, Boeing currently produces about 7 787 aircraft per month at its Charleston final assembly line. Although Boeing began 777X production in 2019, the manufacturer recently confirmed that the oldest planes will not be the first to be delivered. At the 2025 Dubai Air Show, Simple Flying's Tom Boone had the opportunity to speak with Darren Hulst, Vice President of Commercial Marketing at Boeing. In that discussion, Hulst said that, "We are producing 777Xs today. In fact, some of the airplanes that we're building today will be the first to actually deliver because they're up to the new production standard. Some of the airplanes that we've built in the past or have already built will go through some change incorporation to make sure they're all with the delivery standard or certification standard, and that will kind of feather through the next few years." The reason for delivering the newest aircraft first and leaving early build planes in storage is that initial 777X airframes were constructed to preliminary specifications based on what Boeing expected the certification standard to be at the time. However, as Hulst alluded to, Boeing made small changes over the past 5 years. These modifications require Boeing's oldest 777X aircraft to undergo certain upgrades before they can be delivered, while today's production aircraft are built to the latest standard. With 777X production continuing and an anticipated delivery date in 2027, a date that has been continuously pushed back year after year, the question of who will be the recipient of the first 777X remains. Lufthansa is currently expected to be the launch customer. In 2013, Lufthansa was the first airline to order the 777X when it placed an order for 34 777-9s. It later increased its order by 7 in May 2022. However, no matter which airline becomes the launch customer for the 777X, Boeing expects a rapid delivery schedule in the first few months after certification. Speaking on 777X deliveries, Hulst said, "It is all honestly very, very close together. Between the first operator and the second and the third is only going to be a matter of weeks or months." In total, Boeing has over 600 orders for the 777X, with 270 of those from Dubai-based Emirates. In addition to Emirates, Gulf rival Qatar Airways has orders for 124 777X aircraft. Several Asia-based carriers have also placed significant orders for the 777X, including Korean Air, Cathay Pacific, Singapore Airlines and All Nippon Airways. The 777X is one of the most highly anticipated and delayed aircraft ever announced. The program has been affected by several rounds of delays, including increased regulatory scrutiny after the 2019 737 MAX crashes, COVID-19-related supply chain disruptions, and extended testing and software review requirements. These delays have not only significantly impacted Boeing's financial position, but also the strategies of airlines that rely on the 777X for fleet renewal programs. Among these airlines is Emirates, the largest customer of the 777X. Because of continued delays, Emirates ordered 73 Airbus A350-900 aircraft to support network expansion and the renewal of its legacy 777 fleet. In addition to Emirates, Lufthansa and Qatar are further examples of airlines forced to alter their strategy because of delivery delays. On the German side, Lufthansa brought several of its A380 aircraft out of retirement and introduced its new Allegris cabin concept on the A350 instead of the 777X. Similarly, 777X delays have forced Qatar Airways to bring back its fleet of A380 aircraft to support post-pandemic travel demand. Ultimately, the growing number of parked Boeing 777Xs highlights a fascinating reality of modern aircraft manufacturing. Certification delays may slow deliveries, but production itself often continues because airlines, suppliers, and manufacturers cannot simply pause an entire industrial ecosystem for years at a time. So, while dozens of 777Xs now sit parked around Seattle waiting for approval, they also represent Boeing's attempt to prepare for the moment certification finally arrives. Because once the FAA clears the aircraft, Boeing wants to move fast. What do you think? Do you believe the Boeing 777X will ultimately become Boeing's next legendary long-haul aircraft? Or have the delays already changed the future of the program too much? Let us know by leaving a comment, and don't forget to subscribe for more aviation content. See you next time. In addition to our daily YouTube videos, Simple Flying publishes over 150 articles and a podcast every week. Visit simpleflying.com.